So what are the concerns that people have in starting a business? What do you notice? What's the thought process for a lot of people?
Our biggest concerns, Geoff, is I haven't got enough time. I don't really know where to start. And how, this sounds like a pretty costly thing, to start a business, because most people think of business as, having a bricks and mortar business, a physical location, which means leases and expensive equipment and all of this stuff. That's what business is, right? Cafes, restaurants, things like that. But today, Geoff, we live in such an amazing time where we've got technology at our fingertips. You might be an architect, I might be an engineer, but I can now, if I wanted to use my skills in my chosen field, I can help people across the planet online. I can design things, I can email, we can use video conferencing, all of that. There's just a lot of ways you can do things very inexpensively. I have, for example, clients like teachers who teach kids all around Australia, but they do it from the comfort of their home. And during the lockdowns, when schools were closed, guess what? These businesses grew because traditional schools were closed, kids weren't being educated. Parents were like, well, I don't want my kid to go through another year where they fall behind. Who else can help them? Tutors can't come to the home because of restrictions. Now, people who are running online tutoring business or online education services, their businesses went through the roof. So sometimes you got to think, how do I turn my passion of, let's say, teaching and fit a scenario where no one else is either doing it or not doing it well enough? And if I could do that, there's a huge opportunity. And that's piecing together pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, I had an interesting random conversation at the coffee shop the other day. I was sitting there and I was just doing some notes, and the guy sat down next to me and he commented about what I was doing. And we started talking. It turns out he's studying mechanical engineering, but he's also a fitter and turner. And he was saying, oh, yeah, not sure which way I'm going to go, whether I'm going to finish my course and all the rest of it. And I said, oh, are you actually interested in, what's your long-term goal? Are you interested in starting a business? And he says, oh, yeah, I want to work for myself, but I don't think that's going to happen. I said, oh, why not? He said, well, I'd have to buy a $70,000 machine to get started. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, really? Do you have to buy it? And he goes, oh, yeah, I'd have to buy it. It's like, oh, you couldn't lease it. Oh, well, leasing would be a hassle. Or you couldn't just use someone else's machine for a while and rent their machine while they do it. Oh, no, and I'd need to own it, and I'd need to buy the shed, and I'd need to do that. And he started racking up this huge bill. I reckon it would have cost him $500,000 by the time he finished. But it was also, what struck for me was that line of thinking about how it has to look. And often we go, oh, it has to look like what it's going to finish up like, rather than how do you get started. And also he said, oh, I've got this idea for a product, and it's like, I think it'll work. Like, it's a good idea, but I don't know whether it's going to work. And I said to him, well, how do you test it? Oh, I can't test it until I do it. It's like, oh, really? It's like, if you knew how I operated, it's just like you put up a sales page. If someone buys the program, you create the program. So it's kind of that thinking about how to get started and what you actually need.
I think that's a good point.
We box ourselves into corners about how it's supposed to look or how it's supposed to work, and we talk ourselves out of it as a result.
Well, I think you're right. Based on our limited understanding of what things are, that's how we paint a picture in our head, and they're limiting beliefs, right? Because so you know what I mean by limiting belief. If that person you're talking about had this idea that they had to own the shed and they had to own the equipment and they're never going to get off the ground. And that's their entire universe of what business is. They've not considered anything else. So, they're going to be saving for the rest of their life. I mean, the day they buy a house, now they've got a mortgage, now they've got expenses. The business thing just gets pushed further and further and further away to the point where it becomes practically impossible. Let's say they did get the money and they borrowed heavily to buy the shed and buy the equipment and all of that. And now we fall into a pandemic, right? Which has happened, by the way. And now they can't conduct their business. They've now lost money. They've lost all this time and effort. And guess what? When you and I talk to that person, go, hey, how's business? Oh, business sucks. Business is too hard. And And imagine if I were a young budding entrepreneur and I wanted to talk to this guy, and he would talk me out of business because he'd say, you don't want to get anywhere near business. It's gonna be the death of you, you know. And so I come across all of this stuff, Geoff, and I listen, and then I go, that's interesting. Who told you that? And who told you that? And why is that? You know, yeah, it's interesting. You know, I've seen people make decisions. Smart people make really ill-informed decisions, I should say, or based on other people's opinions. And unfortunately, they lose a lot of time and money, which you never get.
Yeah, one of the funniest stories I've ever heard around that was, so Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all that.
Yeah.
He used to tell the story that it's like people would come to him and say, I don't invest in the share market because my neighbor over the back fence told me it's not good.
Yep.
It's like, well, is he an expert in the share market, or is he even an investor?
Yeah.
It's like you want to go to people that actually have some experience around this. And that's kind of why a coach is actually useful at times, because they can, challenge, but also potentially put up alternatives. And I was just struck with this guy. I could just see that, literally, as you said, he's probably going to be in the same boat in 5 years' time because the way he's framed the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, it was like, how do you make this? How do you go and test this week?